Before you scroll, answer this. In which European country did Ozzy build a private rose garden out of his love for gardening? And try this one as well. What strict household rule did Ozzy enforce during filming of the Osbournes reality show? Let me know your guesses in the comments below. I'll reveal them to you in just a bit. But while you think, let me welcome you to the Versed Masters of Music. I'm Dick Carlson. Stay tuned to see how the Prince of Darkness turned into a devoted gardener, and how his final concert in 2023 brought his story full circle. But to truly understand Ozzy Osbourne, we need to go back to where it all began, because his early years hold pivotal moments. You'd never believe Ozzy Osbourne was born. John Michael Osbourne on December 3, 1948 in Marston Green, a quiet suburb near Birmingham, England. But he wasn't raised in luxury. His childhood unfolded in Aston, one of Birmingham's toughest working-class neighborhoods, where factory smoke and cold council houses painted the backdrop of everyday life. He grew up in a tiny home with 5 siblings, crammed into tight quarters where every penny mattered. His father worked night shifts at a tool factory, and his mother did double duty at a car parts plant. Money was always short. Warmth came more from family chaos than from heating, and school didn't make things easier. Ozzy struggled with undiagnosed dyslexia and was often bullied by classmates and dismissed by teachers. He once said he didn't read a full book until he was well into adulthood, but even then there was something in him that didn't quite fit into the world around him. By his teens, he was bouncing between odd jobs just to help keep things afloat. He worked as a plumber's apprentice, spent time in a slaughterhouse, and even tried his hand at construction, but nothing stuck for long. And then came his first taste of infamy. At just 17, Ozzy was arrested for breaking into a clothing store. He couldn't afford the fine and spent 6 weeks in prison. That was the world Ozzy came from. But there was always a growing sense that maybe, just maybe, there was something more out there. He didn't have a plan yet. But the chaos that filled his early years would soon become the fuel behind a musical storm. By the late 1960s, Ozzy wasn't doing well. He didn't have a career, but he knew one thing for sure. He loved music. He'd been inspired by the Beatles growing up, and somewhere deep down he believed music could be his way out. That belief found new life when he joined forces with 3 local musicians from Birmingham. They were Tony Iommi on guitar, Geezer Butler on bass, and Bill Ward on drums. They called themselves Earth at first, but soon realized there was another band with the same name. So they switched it to something darker, Black Sabbath, and with that name change, everything changed. In 1970, they released their first 2 albums, Black Sabbath and Paranoid, just months apart. No one had ever heard anything like it before. The sound was thick, slow, and heavy. Then, with hits like Iron Man War Pigs and the title track Paranoid, Black Sabbath lit the fuse for what would become heavy metal. From 1970 to 1978, they dropped album after album redefining the genre. Master of Reality, Vol, 4, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and Sabotage. Each one pushed the boundaries. Ozzy's voice was raw, almost otherworldly. His wails and howls cut through the riffs like a siren in a storm. The band's lyrics explored war madness, religion, and fear, and on stage, Ozzy exuded raw energy and chaotic performances. It was during one of these shows that he famously bit the head off a bat, thinking it was fake. It wasn't. But behind the scenes, things were falling apart. As the band got bigger, so did their vices. Drugs and alcohol became a daily habit. The once tight unit started to fracture. Ozzy in particular began to spiral. He missed rehearsals, forgot lyrics, and became more and more unreliable. The music was still there, but the chemistry was breaking. By 1979, the band had reached a breaking point. The others were tired of Ozzy's self-destruction and made a brutal call to fire him. It hit hard. Ozzy was devastated. For a while, he locked himself in a hotel room and barely spoke to anyone, convinced it was all over, but it was not an ending, but a new beginning. Getting fired from Black Sabbath could have been the end of Ozzy's story. Instead, it became his greatest turning point. In 1980, just a year after hitting rock bottom, Ozzy launched his solo career with the album Blizzard of Oz. Right out of the gate, it was a game changer. The record featured songs like Crazy Train, which became one of the most iconic rock anthems of all time. But the real magic magic behind the music came from Ozzy's partnership with a young guitar genius, Randy Rhoads. Their creative chemistry was electric. Together, they brought something fresh and bold to heavy metal, but just as things were taking off, tragedy struck. In 1982, during a tour stop in Florida, Randy Rhoads was killed in a freak plane crash. Ozzy was again left devastated. He later said he felt like he lost a brother, and for a while he nearly quit music altogether, but he kept going. In the years that followed, Ozzy released hit albums like Diary of a Madman, Bark at the Moon, and No Rest for the Wicked, cementing his place as a solo superstar. And during that same time, something even more life-changing happened. He fell in love. In 1982, Ozzy married Sharon Arden, the daughter of his former manager. Since then, Sharon became his lifeline. She took over managing his career and built a beautiful family. Together, they had 3 children, and while Ozzy was still touring and rocking out on stage at home, they started building something stable and lasting. By the mid-1990s, Ozzy had already built a powerful solo career. In 1996, Ozzy launched Ozzfest, a touring heavy metal festival that brought together the loudest, wildest, and most die-hard acts in the scene. What started as a bold experiment quickly became one of the most successful touring festivals of its time. Fans packed arenas and outdoor stages year after year, and Ozzfest soon became a staple in the world of rock. At its peak, the festival earned over $100 million, proving that Ozzy was fully in charge. Then in 2002, Ozzy made a move that no one saw coming. MTV debuted a reality show called The Osbournes, giving fans an unfiltered look inside the daily life of Ozzy, Sharon, and their kids. It was loud, weird, and often hilarious. The world saw a new side of Ozzy. He was no longer a bat-biting rocker, but a confused dad trying to figure out the TV remote and mumbling through family dinners. There was one of Ozzy's strictest household rules during filming of the show, that no one allowed to touch Ozzy's private snack drawer. Sharon and the kids joked that it was the only thing in the house he truly protected. The show was an instant hit, turning the Osbournes into pop culture royalty and giving Ozzy a brand new audience. This surge in fame also brought massive wealth. Ozzy was now pulling in millions from every direction. He and Sharon had quietly built a business empire, one that turned rock stardom into real estate and long-term wealth. At the height of this success, the Osbournes were living in a stunning mansion in Hidden Hills, California, surrounded by luxury and chaos in equal measure. They also kept their estate in Buckinghamshire, England, a peaceful contrast to the flashing cameras of Hollywood. And later they added a villa in Switzerland, a quiet mountainside retreat that Ozzy would grow to love for its clean air and quiet walks. Ozzy's car collection was just as extravagant. He cruised around in a Rolls-Royce Phantom, pushed the pedal in a Ferrari 458, and kept a few Range Rovers for daily drives. But no matter how big the house or how fast the car, his life always circled back to something simpler. It was his family. As the 2010s rolled in, the man who had once seemed unstoppable began facing the biggest battle of his life, which was his own health. Back in 2003, Ozzy suffered a horrific quad bike accident at his UK estate. The crash left him with multiple broken bones, including a fractured collarbone, 8 ribs, and a damaged neck vertebra. Though he recovered, it marked the beginning of a long, painful decline. Behind closed doors, he was already dealing with something even more serious. What the world didn't know was that Ozzy had been quietly battling Parkinson's disease since 2003. He kept it private for years, pushing through shows and recording sessions. But in January 2020, he finally shared the diagnosis. Publicly, tour after tour had to be canceled. His body couldn't keep up with the demands of the stage anymore. Instead, Ozzy turned inward, spending more time at home focusing on rehab recovery and the people who meant the most to him. But even as his body weakened, his spirit never gave in. In 2020, Ozzy released Ordinary Man, an album filled with reflection, resilience, and that unmistakable edge. Just 2 years later, in 2022, he followed it up with Patient Number 9, a haunting, powerful record made under incredible conditions. Most of his vocals were recorded from home studios using high-tech equipment because he could no longer physically manage traditional sessions. Even as Ozzy's health waned, he remained unbreakable in spirit. In October 2023, he made a surprise appearance at California's Power Trip Festival, delivering a heartfelt short set. Though brief, it was a testament to his will, defying Parkinson's and everything life had thrown at him. Then, on July 5, 2025, in his hometown of Birmingham, he reunited with Black Sabbath for Back to the Beginning, his final concert at Villa Park. Seated on a throne due to his physical limits, He gave a raw, emotional performance alongside Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward. It was a full-circle moment, the beginning and the end stitched together with thunderous guitars. Just 2 weeks later, on July 22, 2025, Ozzy Osbourne passed away peacefully at home in Buckinghamshire. He was surrounded by Sharon, his children, and grandchildren. Though an air ambulance was called as a precaution, he died quietly, without pain, held by the people who loved him most. Tributes poured in from across the globe, mourning the loss of a man who had shaped music, culture, and the very meaning of rebellion. As the world said goodbye to Ozzy Osbourne, it also paused to take in the vast legacy he left behind, not just in music, but in wealth impact and a surprising sense of quiet dignity. At the time of his passing in 2025, Ozzy's net worth was estimated at $220 million. This immense fortune was the reward for over 5 decades of relentless creativity and reinvention. Much of his empire was managed jointly with Sharon. Together, they built a brand that extended beyond rock and roll. But for all that fame and fortune, those who knew him best saw something more grounded. Offstage, Ozzy was surprisingly gentle. In his final years, Ozzy moved to his private villa in Switzerland with his wife Sharon, far from the noise of fame. There he built his own rose garden simply out of his love for gardening. Most mornings he'd stroll among the flowers with his dogs, sipping tea, surrounded by peace and silence. Ozzy Osbourne's life was the blueprint for every rocker who dared to be wild, real, and unapologetically human. His story was filled with extremes: the fame, failure, rebirth, and redemption. But at its core, it was always about heart. Which part of Ozzy's story hit you the hardest? Or was there something about him you never expected? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if Ozzy's journey moved you, don't go far, because the story of the next legend is just around the corner.